The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Knowledge is power, and this is powerful stuff. Wellness Education Cannabis Advocates of Nevada present the We Can 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour with the We Can radio team. For the next 60 minutes, we'll take an in-depth look at the cannabis reform revolution sweeping the nation. Now, let's fire up the news hour. Here is the We Can radio team.
Afternoon and welcome to the Weekend 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour. I'm your host, Mike McAuliffe, and with me is my good friend and co-host, Perry Haichu. So, anyway, it's an interesting time in this country and in this movement because we've made such gains and there's such trepidation out there because of you were just mentioning before the broadcast, day by day, the nominations for the new administration or the appointments for the new administration seem to be getting worse for this industry.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that he's purposefully doing it to undermine the cannabis industry at all. I just don't think we're on his radar at all, and he's just giving it no thought whatsoever. And whatever happens to us just kind of happens as a result of these appointments as far as he's concerned. So he's got bigger fish to fry, and he's just going with who he's got a group of people around him that he trusts. Mm-hmm. And like I said before, he answers only to him and he nominates these people. And apparently his Health and Human Services Secretary nomination is also another notorious pot prohibitionist, according to Republicans, against marijuana prohibition.
Well, I think that's Elaine Chao, and she's
Boehner's wife, right?
No, she's McDonald's wife.
Oh, Jesus.
And so, yeah, she's going to be well, I can understand him making that kind of deal to try and cozy up to McConnell a little bit.
Not exactly draining the swamp, is he?
No, I don't think so. But then, Washington, we should have known to expect this because Washington, D.C. on the Potomac was a swamp. The nation's capital was built out of a swamp, and so everyone who works there takes on the moniker of swamp dweller.
No doubt.
And unfortunately, a lot of times in our political scene, they seem to act that way. Even though we've got some great people there, they're far and few between. And anyway, so right next to Washington, though, is Virginia, one of the founding colonies of the U.S. And back in the pre-revolutionary days, it was mandatory for farmers to grow hemp on their land, and they would pay part of their tax to the king in hemp, which was used to make rope, which was used to make sails,
sure,
and all that sort of stuff. Well, Virginia is now harvesting its first hemp crop grown since the plant was banned 70 years ago. And it's just showing more and more of a sign of the times. We talked on the show in the last couple of weeks about Arkansas being the first Bible Belt state to go medical marijuana, and now Mitch McConnell, whom we just mentioned, is a big supporter of industrial hemp.
Yeah, he's always been for hemp farming for sure. He's always been about Kentucky hemp farmers and this and that. I heard him talking about it a while ago, but I don't think his love of hemp technically extends to medicinal or recreational cannabis, but still, baby steps are good. We definitely want to have the stigma removed from hemp, also considering, of course, there's no psychoactive
of the plant.
Yeah, there's no psychoactive ingredients, and it's just a wonderful thing. So I hope that industrialized hemp comes more quickly to Nevada. Actually, I'm hoping that we can see it nationwide and hope for a quick expansion.
I do believe we're one of the signatories to the, or one of the states that passed legislation in light of the 2014 Farm Bill, which will allow for industrial hemp pilot programs, under a watchful eye to get started. I don't know why they think it's so dangerous. It's such a useful plant. But anyway, in Virginia, the farmers were actually required to grow hemp, as I said, during the colonial era. And it's funny that we had to pass legalization or pass legislation again to just to do research and just to begin this process, because this growing of hemp is part of the aftermath of that 2014 bill. And here we are, 2 years later, and they're just starting to get these programs underway. And that's the same delay that we saw with the medical marijuana program and the dispensary rollout here in Nevada. And it seems to be consistent throughout the country, whether the people vote on it or whether the legislators pass it. There's a big period of time before when the people actually.
Oh, usually, of course, there's a significant amount of time. They slow drag it as much as possible. Yeah. I think there's a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say manipulation, but there's a lot of claims on the side of the legislators and regulators that they need to take this very carefully and things like that, so they want to use that as a justification to slow drag it. But a lot of people, of course, on our side of the fence want to get these industries rolling as soon as possible, so there's always going to be that push and pull, and where the balance lies is I guess it just lies wherever the chips kind of fall at the end of the day. I mean, we just got to do our best to try to make reasonable requests and have reasonable regulations come out of this. Not be too aggressive and not be too passive either. It's kind of like I said, it's a dirty balance we have to make.
It is, and these politicians are so behind the people in their sense of acceptance of the use of things like industrial hemp, even. And this legislator in Virginia, whose name is I've got it here, Joseph R. Yost, and he was a sponsor of this hemp research bill, Republican delegate, and he said it seemed far-fetched to me talking about growing hemp, but the more research and study you do about it, the more you see the possibilities. So he's a proponent for the economic boosting potential of industrial hemp, and especially since in Virginia and a number of those states are seeing a drop-off in revenues from their tobacco fields.
Sure.
So this is a replacement for those.
I've always wondered whether some of these companies are going to, I don't want to say instruct these farmers, but once these farmers eventually or inevitably lose some of these contracts for growing tobacco, what will they turn to? And maybe hemp will be, I don't want to say like a saving grace for some of these people, but definitely a stipend or a supplement until they can transition into something else. Or maybe this could be something full-time that they'll get into depending on how the returns are for them. It's all kind of situational. I just really hope I hope for the best, because it's wonderful to see people make the move from growing something that kills people to something that actually does a lot of good for good for people. So I'll be keeping my fingers crossed for that. And there's a lot of fertile land back east. I can't imagine it would have a tough time growing it.
Yeah, and hemp was of course a staple product in the country, and when it was banned in 1937, it was one of the players who was pushing for the prohibition of all forms of cannabis. Was the DuPont company, and they saw that the fiber from the hemp plant was a direct competitor to the new nylon that they had just developed.
Right.
And so, along with Hearst on the West Coast, who was protecting his timber stands, along with cotton farmers who were protecting their crop, it amazes me how this country has stayed buried under that for so long.
Well, so you said they harvest their first crop in more than 70 years. Like how many people are growing it in Virginia? Is there just like the one guy are doing it?
These are just pilot programs at this point.
Okay.
There's a professor at James Madison University who's overseeing their hemp research program. So it's not like you have private individuals or business people going out and starting to get a commercial crop going. It's
testing the waters. All right.
Oh, they're so slow. But Virginia, one of the founding colonies, finally growing hemp again. So what else is going on out here on the East Coast there? One of the founding colonies, Massachusetts, and we've talked about them in the past few weeks.
Yeah.
Of course, Massachusetts was one of the states that legalized this election night, and on December 15th, it will be legal for adults over 21 years of age to possess up to 1 ounce outside of your residence.
It's very cool. Law almost becomes legal, takes effect right away. That's
and
good.
People can then, almost immediately, and people can possess up to 10 ounces in their residence,
Oh, wow.
and will be allowed to grow up to 6 plants per person with a maximum of 12 per household. Well, that's what they've done out here as well. And so I guess that's a reasonable amount if you keep, 4 cloning and 4 vegging and 4 flowering. that should be a personal supply.
Sure, I suppose.
I would think. So the part of the problem, though, is that the way these laws have been implemented, and you see this here in Nevada, where they passed this law to protect patients and to give them the right to use, but then they say, well, employers, you don't have to pay attention to that. You can fire them if you want.
Right.
And they updated the law in 2013 and again in 2015, and still employers can terminate for any reason, but they can terminate for any reason at all in this state anyway.
Right.
So even if they couldn't terminate you for your medical marijuana use, if they found, if they knew that you were, they could just say, well, you're 2 minutes late today. Get out of here.
Yeah, well, it is what it is, and the right to work legislation and employers' rights have really kind of gotten out of control in this country very, very quickly. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see such a pushback from younger people who want to end up working for themselves in this entrepreneurial spirit. You know what I mean? They're just tired of getting put through the ringer by a lot of employers and trying to have their lives outside of their work dictated by their job. I mean, you work to live, not live to work, so the saying goes. And my argument would be, if your employer is going to pay you 24 hours a day, then that's fine. They can tell you what to do 24 hours a day. But when I'm off the clock, it's very hard for me to justify following your rules when I'm sitting on my couch. That's not what my idea of a free society is, or supposedly what we call a free society. And once again, I've made this argument time and again. There's a big stigma and stereotype among stoners that they're lazy and they don't work and things like that. But how are we ever supposed to get from underneath that stereotype if we're not allowed to enter the workforce as normal people? So this becomes... And once again, I've told you again and again, when I talk to patients out in the street, that's the number one issue they have. I mean, they want to grow their own cannabis, and they want to be able to go to work, almost even more importantly. Because I feel like the home growing only affects the people who are already growing, because you're not going to get 1 million new people growing cannabis come January 1st when it becomes legal, just because the growing of medicinal quality cannabis is quite difficult. Growing crappy weed's real easy, you just stick it in the ground, but it's not what most people have come to expect, even getting it from their street dealer. It's very high quality for a price they've come to expect. Now, once you start tallying up all the costs of the lights and the nutrients and the soil and trying to find good genetics and making sure it doesn't get too hot, and you have female plants and not male plants, and all the power and the risk and this and that and the other, and the time, it doesn't add up just to jump into it for a hobby. It would be like saying that because commercial kitchen equipment is available for normal everyday use, that people are going to stop going to fancy restaurants because they can do it themselves. Well, I guess technically you could, but they don't, because it's a huge pain in the ass and it's difficult. So you still have this market out there.
Beer. People can grow their own tomatoes, but largely they don't.
No, they don't, because of the difficulty or just because of the time involved. And a lot of Americans are very overwhelmed with the amount of work they have or responsibilities between family and this, that, and the other. So they just don't have the time or the space to put into it. And a lot of people rent too. And if you rent, that creates problems with landlords sometimes. You know what I mean? If you're growing medical cannabis in their rental house, they don't like that. That causes friction. So, there's that issue also.
Well, and that part of that problem we've had here in Vegas since the recession, when the real estate market went belly up, you had a lot of houses getting foreclosed upon. You had a lot of people who had investment properties that thought they were going to flip, all of a sudden became landlords, absentee landlords. And so we did get a lot of grow houses throughout the valley, and that is because of the illegal nature. Once we have this normalized market and people aren't getting arrested and you don't have that black market premium, it's just not going to be economical for these guys to be growing in houses in Rhodes Ranch.
No, it's not going to be economical when you have these teams that are able to pump out 50, 60, 70,000 square feet of canopy per crop. They're not going to be able to match that price point. Like I said, when you start tallying up how much it costs, even if they're stealing power, it's going to become very expensive for them
Well, I heard
to make
yesterday
this work.
from one of the MMEs that they're expecting their next harvest to come in at 400 pounds.
That's a lot.
There's no way that these small guys are going to be able to directly compete. And they say that the market is going to be taxed so high that people will still go to the street. That'll happen for a little while.
That'll happen at first, for sure.
And then people will just get used to the convenience of going to a store.
It might even take a year or two for people to really, I guess, wean themselves off of their old ways. You can't undo 80 years of habits overnight like that, regardless of whether you can walk into a store. We've been set in our ways for a long period of time. It's going to take a little bit of time to undo that. Those relationships that exist between, street dealers and their clients and things like that, we'll see how this goes, but I'm still, regardless, I'm excited for the prospect.
And you mentioned, sometimes you have problems with landlords and this and that.
Well, sure.
And getting back to this story in Massachusetts now, if you're a renter, like 829,000 other Massachusetts citizens, you should not expect the right to possess or consume marijuana in a leased property without your landlord's permission.
Oh, boy.
And they pass these initiatives for people, and they put so many holes and back doors into them that it just defeats the intent of what was going on. It
goes on both ends. They play their games and we play ours. We all try to insert these legislative caveats to try to slip them in and see what we can get away with. But the wording that you used, it's not like they can't grow in the house. They're not allowed to possess it unless the landlord says so. I don't really like that.
An attorney who helped craft the medical marijuana legislation, or the legalization legislation, and his name is Adam Fine, and he said that some landlords may be fine with it, and others would say absolutely not. Now, Massachusetts may have legalized pot, but of course it remains federally illegal. And so landlords who receive money from public housing especially are going to be sensitive to this issue.
Section 8 renters, Section 8 landlords.
And most certainly with this new administration coming in. So it's never easy, but the good news, the silver lining there, is for medical marijuana users in the state of Massachusetts. It's a different story, since a tenant who is a medical marijuana patient has the right to not be discriminated against based on a disability or medical condition, according to Attorney Fine. So, that's a step in the right direction.
All right, we'll see how that goes if something like that comes in Nevada's way concerning renters' rights or things like that.
I think one of the things that is good for us to do as a community is to take note of all these things that we're seeing in other states. And then as the legislature is getting prepared to go back in session in February, we need to take these things, gather them up, and get them in front of our sympathetic legislators to say, hey, let's push this through.
Yeah, that's going to have to happen relatively soon, actually, because it's coming upon us rather quickly.
That's why we're doing the research and doing the news.
No doubt.
So we're going to go do a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back in just a couple of minutes.
From the soothing sounds of a water wall to the warmth, wood interior, and beautiful artwork, as soon as you enter Sahara Wellness, you are welcomed into a relaxing space where we strive to provide our patients with a healthy balance of mind, body, and spirit. That balance is achieved through a compassionate and knowledgeable staff who possesses both a passion for the medical cannabis industry as well as unrivaled dedication to assisting those in need of a natural method of pain relief. Our bud tenders are available to assist patients in selecting cannabis-based medicine that best suits their needs from our selection of flower, waxes, CBD lotions, and delicious edibles. Sahara Wellness is located at 420 East Sahara Avenue, Las Vegas, Nevada. Check out our entire menu at www.420sahara.com.
Attention medical marijuana patients. Do you know what your cannabis actually contains? Are there heavy metals, pesticides, or even mold? And what strength is it really? And is it really what you need? Well, the answers to these questions are simple. DigiPath Labs. DigiPath Labs is a Nevada state-approved medical marijuana testing facility whose scientists carefully test products for safety and potency, all within the state's rigorous mandate. you can buy with confidence and trust, knowing DigiPath Labs has tested your medicine. If you're a licensed grower, dispenser, extractor, or edibles manufacturer in Nevada and want unparalleled customer service and consumer confidence, go to DigiPathLabs.com and find out what we can do for you. And as a patient, only go to dispensaries that carry the DigiPath Labs seal of approval. That's DigiPathLabs.com, DigiPath Labs.com. Or call us at 702-209-2429. That's 702-209-2429.
And we're back and talking about legalization and election state results. And we have a story here from the Tacoma News Tribune, and that's thenewstribune.com. And it says 2016 is a milestone year for sales of pot in state. The state being Washington. And they say that sales of marijuana products are nipping at the heels of hard alcohol and have, for the first time, surpassed $200 million in a quarter. Wow, and that's just in one state, and not a really big state at that. In the first quarter of 2016, people spent $54.8 million more on spirits than marijuana, which includes the cost of its products and its associated taxes. By the second quarter, that gap closed to nearly $37 million, and those amounts include taxes levied by the state on these products. Spirit sales do not include wine and beer, and marijuana sales include all cannabis products but not paraphernalia. So they're closing this gap here, and it says that marijuana sales in the second quarter amounted to nearly $212 million. Spirits in the same time were $249 million.
Wow.
So I've got to see this as great news, really, because if you go on the theory of lesser harm, people who are choosing to recreate with a substance that does not kill them, that does not destroy their liver, does not make them think they're invincible and incredibly sexually attractive to the opposite sex and all that sort of stuff, I think that this is the inevitable result of legalization, because if you relax cannabis legalization, you're going to take the pressure to consume alcohol off those people who are looking to just let off some steam or chill out in some way.
No doubt about that. I'm interested to see the potential societal impacts with the raw data in a few years. Like, let's look back to like the domestic violence numbers in areas that were very, very heavy in alcohol consumption in 2009, and then let's look at them in like 2018. If those same counties have implemented recreational legalization at that time and they have the access, let's take a look at those numbers and see if they've had an impact on those, or potential like DUI death numbers, or these things that we associate so closely with hard alcohol use in a serious way. Those are like the detrimental societal effects, you know what I mean? And if you can see some kind of pullback for that, I think that would be a lot of fun to be able to use that in future arguments. Whether that'll come to pass or not is yet to be seen. But I would like to believe what you're saying also, and to think that the more people that smoke cannabis, the better off we all are.
Well, and not smoke, whether it's vape or
whether they're consuming it.
People who have this as an alternative, it is an alternative of less harm. I was speaking to a Metro officer at the scene of a grow house bust one time, and I said to him, "Gee, I'm just sorry that you guys." You don't have any option. All you have is alcohol, and look at the number of police suicides you have. I said, with this as an alternative, people who are cannabis consumers generally are not suicidal.
I've actually considered that as a potential talking point, because I know that, let's say we're in legislative session, we're trying to argue before a committee about, let's say, an employer's rights bill, and the cops are like, oh, well, this, that, and the other, and it's like, well, you don't understand, we're fighting for your rights too. Like, you as police officers should potentially be able to benefit from these same therapies that other patients have. Just because, you have a specific job duty doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to find relief. Now, of course, that comes with guns and there's all kinds of weird stuff that play into that. But in theory, we're all potentially on the same team here. We want people to be healthy and happy, and we want people to go home safely at the end of the day. And if you have guys out there, or even women, who are choosing to cope with their stress by drinking a lot, that sometimes has unintended consequences, regardless of the potential self-medicating you're trying to do. Like you said, they just have fewer options than some other people in certain other professions that choose not to drug test for this.
It's a very difficult issue, and because they say, alcohol use is ingrained in our society, and we've been doing it for all this time.
It is.
And
I was reading an article about it.
That.
I was just reading an article about that the other day. It was about the social acceptance of alcohol within our culture and how we beat back the prohibitionist movement and try to, demonize them as just mother hens trying to hurt, trying to stop people from having a good time. And it was this whole thing, and we've just really embraced alcohol culture over the past 30 years, especially while rejecting tobacco at the same time for some reason. Like back in the day, I remember the NASCAR Cup was the Winston Cup. Right. And now it's like the Sprint Cup, because apparently there are all these advertising restrictions on tobacco products here in the United States. You're not allowed to have like certain like mascots. You're not allowed to have like television commercials or things of that nature. So what they've done is they've just shifted their advertising to Southeast Asia, which is where all their new growth is coming in. There are no, like, young people can go buy cigarettes. You can advertise concerts and things like that. So they're just finding a different way. But I don't know. I just really think that that cannabis is...
Alcohol is not always as lethal as tobacco. Tobacco, is a certain path to something on the order of 400,000 deaths in this country every year, and that's actually down significantly. Alcohol, it's about 150,000 deaths, so it's significant numbers. That's
a lot of people.
That is a lot of people, actually. So back to the story here in Washington, the city of Tacoma opened up its market earlier this year when the city council changed code to allow up to 16 storefronts within the city limits, and they did it at the same time they closed all the medical shops.
Why? Does it go into why?
No, this story does not. I'm going to have to look into this more deeply and talk about it in the future, because
why not have
really
the medical?
Seems to take those business owners and just pull the rug out from under them.
Yeah, I don't understand why they would yank the rug out from, or as you said, just yank their businesses licenses away from them like that. I believe that we've investigated this over the course of the past year or so about how Washington is kind of doing their best to kind of undo the medical program ever since the recreational has kind of taken hold.
Yeah.
And this seems to be a very direct and consequential step in eliminating the medical marijuana program by shutting down access.
That medical versus rec, from a tax point of view, if it's medical, it's not taxed. If it's rec, it is. So if they dismantle the medical program, they're saving that money in the state government over in their division of health or whoever is running it.
They don't have to administer the program anymore.
They don't have to administer the program, and people have to, in theory, pay tax on it. Now, you could still have some sort of identity card, but otherwise it doesn't make sense why they would make their dispensaries close down like that. And according to a lobbyist for the pot industry, who heads the Washington Cannabis Association, Vicki Christopherson, said that increasing revenues for marijuana shops show that the regulated marketplace is effectively competing against the black market. She said we wouldn't be selling to that level if we weren't. Or $200 million in a quarter. Yeah,
that's a lot of weed. Yeah,
that's a lot of weed. I have no idea what the usage in the state of Washington is, but if they're saying that that they're still losing a big chunk to the black market, that's huge.
In all fairness, that's got to be their peak tourist season, though, is right in the middle of the summer when the weather's good. You would expect the numbers to be the biggest during the second quarter, I would think.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens in maybe next month when they report third quarter results or something like that. So we'll be able to come back and take another look and see if they're still catching up or whether there was a taper, tapered off.
What they're also finding here in in Washington State is that there are several dozen cities and counties that have continued to have an outright ban on these facilities, and they don't want it in their community and this and that. But that they're finding that as these tax revenues come in, some of these their resolution is beginning to falter a bit because they want to see that those revenues, especially if their neighbors.
Well, who the hell wants to miss out on easy money like that? There's no real reason not to when you start really looking at it. It's just a moral objection that they have, and usually a false one. So it's just one of these things. Like in Nevada, I heard that West Wendover has now indicated their interest as a city council for a potential recreational application when they were very much so against the medical. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. I think they are allowed to have one. So we'll see how this rolls.
Well, there's a fellow named Jim Doherty, who's a legal consultant with the Municipal Researches and Services Center, which is a nonprofit organization. He said, I think some people were afraid these stores would open and that there'd be these long-haired people hanging around in vans. People have gotten used to the idea that these look like retail stores now. So, you know, oh my God, it's stoner phobia or hippie phobia or
Canna-bigotry.
Canna-bigotry, exactly that. That you're going to open up a shop, you know, and you're going to water it a little bit, and up are going to pop all these long-haired hippies who are going to be espousing free love and, you know, no war in Vietnam and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was just going to say what terrible people.
You know, it's incredible that. But that is the direction that the country is going in to some degree, as evidenced by this recent national election. And the number of hate crimes that have happened, 78, I think I saw this morning, since the election. And so there's a rebelliousness, a rambunctiousness, perhaps.
I've always felt that the federal government instituted hate crimes more on behalf of the minority community only. I remember there was a white truck driver named Reginald something who there was a barricade of people that were blocking the Los Angeles freeway during a protest, and he stopped his car, and he was damn near beaten half to death by a bunch of black people that were on camera and everything. None of them were ever prosecuted, no hate crimes, nothing like that. But you know, it seems to protect protected classes, I guess, as we've established them here in this country. So when you say there have been 78 hate crimes, I bet there have been a whole lot more than that haven't been reported. So it's just one of those, it's just one of those things. So
I agree with that. So we'll see what happens up there in Washington.
Yeah, we will.
You know, because they're making big numbers on their taxes here, and you know, and it's gotten to the point where the liquor distributors or the liquor companies are saying they want their taxes lowered so they can compete.
Oh, of course, sure. That was going to be an inevitable response from their industry as they see their profits getting chipped at. No big deal. I mean, they can make that argument all they want, and we'll see what the regulators have to say about it. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I can't see them. It's hard for me to see any legislative body reversing any liquor or tobacco or cannabis taxes for that reason, just because they don't like to reverse sin taxes. It's not politically advantageous.
It's politically safe to impose the sin taxes.
Yeah, they love to, and they're dependent upon those predictable revenues because people who smoke a lot of cigarettes go back every day for them, so they can kind of have these very easy numbers to bank on. So I would have a hard. They can go ahead and try to lobby for the repeal of some of these taxes, but where are they going to replace the money with? Where are they going to raise taxes on the back end with to replace that money?
Exactly.
So we'll see.
Well, the chief economist for the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States said, the real crime is the tax burden that spirits consumers continue to pay. It's the highest spirits tax in the country by far. So the legislators up in Oregon said, if you want to kill yourself with booze, that's fine, but you're going to have to pay us for the right to do so. And the industry is crying foul. Boy,
I hear you, brother. We should all work together we should all pay less taxes, but you have a very specific case to make, and I'm not going to back you on that.
Taxes is patriotic. So says President-elect Trump.
Well, until 17 or something, none of us pay taxes. Right. And I never really got behind the idea that paying taxes That's a bunch of nonsense. Nonsense. None of us pay tax. They take tax. No one would pay tax voluntarily if it were a thing. And besides that, 49% of this country already doesn't pay tax. So how are half the country going to tell another part of how are 49% of the people that don't pay taxes going to tell another part of the country that they should pay their fair share when those people aren't paying anything also? The whole argument is circular and nonsensical.
Well, as Cicero wrote of ancient Rome, taxes are the sinew of the state, and so they are an integral part of the power of the state, and also written in those times was that the power to tax is the power to oppress, and so you have any group at all, if you want to put them under the thumb, you put a tax on their fun, on their food.
Oh, sure. Well, a tax has always been perceived by me to be a punishment. So that's why it upsets me when they try to say, oh, well, you're very, very good at what you do for a living, so we're going to tax/punish you because of that, how good you got at this thing. You achieved this skill level, or you even were lucky enough to attain this, so we're going to punish you for that. I never really understood that.
But that's the same thing the Nevada law enforcement did for years and years in our medical marijuana program, where if you developed a knack, an aptitude for growing your medicine and could supply yourself and could supply a bounty more than for yourself, and develop that skill, and then you wanted to take it on and help other people, right, you were in their sights.
Oh, absolutely, no doubt about it. I've seen that happen time and again. I don't, crazy times indeed.
Crazy times. Okay, so we were talking the last week or two about food safety, and that cannabis these days, coming out of this regulated industry, is safer than your food in many cases. And there's an article here from SF Gate that experts have found that the majority of California's cannabis is not up to the same quality standards that Oregon growers adhere to.
That's probably because there's no statewide regulation yet. But hopefully they'll get that under control. I mean, there are tons of independent labs in California that have been operating for a long time. Sure. I remember when I worked at this store for a while, if you wanted to put your cannabis on weed maps in Hollywood or in California, you had to send your medicine to one of their approved labs, which was of course just another revenue stream for them. But regardless, they weren't testing to the level that we were, though. They weren't looking for heavy metals and pesticides and stuff. It was more about the numbers, how much THC is in it, how much CBD is in it, and what kind of terpenes were in it. And that's probably about as far as they would.
And I also think that's more for the higher end product that you see going into the medical industry in California. No matter how much is grown indoors, the bulk of California's production was always going to be up in the Emerald Triangle and those big outdoor fields. And so I think that's where some of the contaminants wind up coming from in large quantity. Sure. But according to a new data provided by Steep Hill Labs and New Frontier up in Oregon, an overwhelming majority of this pot grown in California would fail to meet the Oregon Liquor Control Commission standards, and they're the ones who are regulating this industry. So in Oregon, you've got the Liquor Control Board controlling liquor and pot. And that's not a terrible thing. If you treat them similarly, then I think having the same agency do it, they're going to be familiar, and they're going to put them regulatorily into two parallel channels. So
this guy just decided all on his own to go to California and start testing these strains according to Oregon standards, just to see where they stood?
Well, because California, now that they've legalized, they're going to be the big cheese in this. They're going to have the huge production. They're going to,
of
happy
course,
pot comes from California, that sort of stuff, right? And so I think that Oregon is looking at this and saying, okay, how are we going to fight back and saying, our homegrown, organic, natural produce is the finest in the Pacific.
Got to separate yourself, okay?
Yeah. Huh. So that's probably what was behind this. And according to Steep Hill Labs, they found that 83% of California's cannabis products would not meet the testing standards required by labs certified by the Oregon Environmental Laboratory Accreditation Program. Another mouthful. So the vast majority, almost 5 out of 6 plants out of California would fail these Oregon tests, but people have been consuming it. And one of the things that got me when I was reading this story first is that we're so concerned with the contaminants. We're so concerned with all these things that could get into our pot, bugs, mold, pesticides,
Yeah, sure.
All this sort of stuff, too much fertilizer and everything, and we're testing it. And that's great. That's a good thing. But in all the time before we had this new industry, and people have been smoking pot in this country since before we had a country, and in the past several decades where we've had so much of an explosion in indoor growth and cultivation, and where you would get all these various contaminants in, still nobody has died from pot. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't test this stuff. That's good.
I know. I guess what you're trying to say is it's not as dangerous as people are trying to make it out to be. If a little bit slips in, it's not going to poison the populace. You're not going to have a mass poisoning like you saw at the Thanksgiving dinner at the nursing home over the weekend, where 5 elderly people died and 10 of them went to the hospital because there was some bad food there. You're never going to have that at a cannabis party, most likely, unless there's poison food there. So
it's not. You see, it's not even that we've repeated ad nauseum, and we've shown that you can't overdose on cannabis. Cannabis will not kill you. Fine. Even the stuff that they're testing for, that they say, is really bad and you shouldn't have it in your system, and the pesticides and the poisons and the this and that and everything, even that won't kill you on the plant, because apparently you can't ingest enough of it from habitual smoking to cause this. We've never seen a story come from this, and that doesn't mean that we should stop testing it, and it doesn't mean we should consume stuff that has pesticides on it. No, that's never a good idea. That's not the point.
No, of course, you want to have a safe product out there, and you want to give the public opinion that you're trying to do everything you can to protect them. That's what the agency is supposed to be there for, of course. So you got to at least keep up appearances.
Yeah, you do. And so as they're testing this stuff up in Oregon, and they were talking about their homegrown product in Oregon, they said a year ago when we first started testing product, we were finding very high rates of pesticides in the neighborhood of 70 to 80% of the samples, said the president of the Portland Greenhouse Analytical Labs. And he said now we're finding it in the neighborhood of 20%. So even just the act of testing and knowing it's going to be tested, people are cutting back on their pesticides.
Sure.
So this is a very libertarian example of the market steering its vendors in the proper direction.
Of course. Well, how many samples failed here in Nevada at first from the ILAC regulations? They got their crap together relatively quickly, though, and now you never hear about people missing it now. Yeah. So it just is what it is.
Well, it's big money involved here. You don't like to make those mistakes too.
No, of course not.
And speaking of big money, it's time for us to pay the bills with our advertisers, and please listen to their messages.
Hi, I'm Armin Yamanijan, CEO of Essence Dispensaries, and I'd like to let you know a little bit about our company. As a completely complimentary service, our on-site nurse is here to meet with any patient or non-patient to discuss dosing and best practices. We have 3 convenient locations. We have 1 location on Tropicana between Decatur and Jones, which is our west side location. Our Henderson location is on the corner of Sunset and Green Valley Parkway, and we're proud to announce that we have the first and only dispensary on the Las Vegas Strip, on the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Sahara. Our prices are the lowest prices in town and the highest quality medicine. Please come and see us at one of our 3 convenient locations or visit us at essencevegas.com. You can also call us at 702-978-7575. Once again, the number is 702-978-7575.
Getting legal Legal offers an informative and simple way for you to get your marijuana card. Why come to Getting Legal to get your marijuana card? We have a 99% approval rating and the lowest price in town. Avoid legal problems. Getting Legal can get you legal fast. Ready for a new start? Come in now and get relief from your chronic conditions affecting your quality of life. Call Getting Legal today at 702-979-9999. That's 702-979-9999. Or visit our website at gettinglegal.com to get your marijuana card today.
And we're back with the last segment of the Nevada Cannabis News Hour. Thank you so much for tuning in. We got a story here from the National Football League. We've been seeing a lot of these recently about people, players, athletes choosing to use medical cannabis to alleviate their symptoms concerning concussion symptoms or, not necessarily stress symptoms.
TBI, traumatic brain injury.
Yeah, brain injury symptoms and just arthritis. And these guys get banged up pretty seriously.
And a lot of these guys tend to be, the ones who've come out and we've heard about it, are people largely who are retired and who are out of the game because then no sanctions can be taken.
Right.
But we are seeing a number of players this year coming out who are active.
They're
in the
becoming
league.
more emboldened. They're tired of hiding. I think a lot of people saw that ESPN 30 for 30 special about what happened to Ricky Williams from the Miami Dolphins, who was just this wonderful running back who was so almost bullied out of the league by the NFL over his cannabis use, and he just kind of put his foot down. He's like, to hell with it. I'm just going to leave and do my thing. And there were other circumstances that led to his departure from the league, but that was one of the main talking points that he was making of what kind of rubbed him the wrong way with league management. But anyway, long story longer, this guy from the Buffalo Bills, his name is Sontrell Henderson. He's going to serve a 10-game suspension for using medical cannabis in violation of the league's substance abuse policy. He's 24 years old, and he uses it to help manage his severe symptoms from his Crohn's disease, which is pretty bad intestinal disease. He's lost a bunch of weight, over 50 pounds, and they had to remove like almost 3 feet of his intestine and put his guts all back together. And he tried to make a comeback and all this kind of stuff. And the NFL is just like, look, we don't really care what's going on. You're in violation of the policy, and the policy is the policy. And according to us, you have to serve this suspension. And 10 games in a 16-game season, that's damn near the whole year. And that creates friction between management because they pay you for these games, and they're looking for there's only 52 men on each roster. There are thousands and thousands of people looking to fill these positions, so the competition is fierce, and he's trying to stand up for his rights here. So here's the official statement. Merciful or not, there is no medical exception that the NFL will accept. It doesn't matter that Sontrell is battling Crohn's disease and that he had his intestines outside his body. His agent Brian Fetner told ESPN, "It doesn't matter how you take it. If you digest the cannabis, that's it, and they don't care." Former NFL players and advocates for athletes are also for cannabis and its medical qualities include Ricky Williams and Eugene Monroe. There are doctors, his doctors are telling him this is the number one treatment. They're recommending it for him. But regardless, the NFL's doctors do not concur. So this is what it is. And hopefully, once again, I'm not exactly sure what the league is going to do. Will they feel emboldened by the Trump administration to hold their ground, or will they listen on behalf of their players that are so adamant in explaining their want to self-medicate freely?
It seems to me that ownership, the ownership interests in these various professional sports franchises has always been a little slow to give in to the things that are in the best interest of the players. If they look at something and they think that there's going to be any blowback on it, they would rather let the players, just play under the system, because, as you said, thousands of people want to get in. So their viewpoint is, look, if you're going to get in here, we're the epitome of American athleticism, and we represent the finest ideals and role models for the country, all that sort of stuff. And so if you're going to be in the NFL, like the spousal abusers and stuff,
look,
and
man,
the dog beaters, and
anyway. Ray Rice gets
the point
2
is,
game suspension for beating the shit out of his wife, and 10 games for smoking a joint.
There you go.
These are the things. I hate to jump in on you,
but the point there being that they're saying, this is the paragon of American manhood. And so if you're going to play in here, you got to tough it out, and no funny.
Yeah, but you can fly to Vegas and go to the club and spend $20,000 at the club and put it on your Instagram, and that's okay as long as you're back for practice on Tuesday.
Yeah.
But if you're caught, I remember there was some backup running back or something from the Cowboys was spotted walking out of a dispensary by TMZ. Yes. Didn't make a purchase, nothing like that. He was with his buddy in Denver for a game or something and was filmed or photographed walking out of a dispensary, and all hell broke loose. There was news coverage, and Jerry Jones had to release a statement saying he doesn't approve of his players being in establishments like that. It's like, well, what about if they went to the whorehouse in Nevada? Would you give them a pat on the back then, Jerry?
Probably wouldn't say much of anything at all.
It's just one of those things. It's just the double standard. It is unbelievable, I don't know. But anyway, here's another story, Pat, moving on from sports.
Sure.
There's a story that I'm sure caught a lot of national coverage. You guys at home probably heard about it. There was an Ohio State Highway Patrol officer who stopped a guy who was, of course, speeding on the interstate. And,
he was following a little too closely. Yeah.
Anyway, long story longer, the guy had a bunch of Christmas presents wrapped in the back of his truck. They searched the car, found like 71 pounds of grass, valued at over $350,000. I mean, Yates was stopped in Wood County on November 21st for following a vehicle too closely. During a search of his Ford Expedition, a trooper saw 10 gift wrap boxes. And what the police press release called criminal indicators, a drug sniffing dog was brought to the scene. Said 360 THC pills, a pound of hash wax oil, and 71 pounds of cannabis flowers were found.
Wow.
16 years in prison maximum and a $30,000 fine. Medical marijuana has been illegal in Ohio since December. 2 second-degree felonies he's facing. Don't tailgate.
Well, okay.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, don't tailgate. Yeah, if you're going to do something like that, obey the traffic laws.
Yeah,
but,
come on. But seriously,
what I found interesting in that piece was two words: were criminal indicators. They said they looked at his car, they saw the packages, and criminal indicators. What the hell does that mean? Does that mean
premature Christmas? Premature Christmas decorations. Who wraps Christmas presents in the middle of November before Thanksgiving on a road trip? Nobody.
Well, I'm going east, and I'm not going to be back there for the holidays, so I got my Christmas stuff done.
I suppose. Look, I hear you, but a lot of these cops just use their intuition on some of these. Smell trouble. Like if you're a guy if your license says you're from Santa Cruz, California, and you have long hair and are driving a damn van or something, you know what I mean? Like you can't fit the stereotype. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you gotta be sharper than that. Seriously. Like I don't know what this guy looks like or whatever. I'm totally fabricating this whole story in my head. But in my head, I feel like he could have been a little sharper. And I'm not justifying. I'm not saying, hey, yeah, all there. Let me teach you how to go ship 70 pounds across the country.
No, not at all.
But it's just like, for Christ's sake, you know what I mean?
Yeah, if you're going to be doing anything that you don't want, as Han Solo said, imperial attention over, then by all means, obey the traffic regulations.
Hopefully he can plead down and not do 16 years in prison, for Christ's sake. That's a little insane.
That would
you know what I mean?
That would be terrible.
Or even worse, I would hate them to see, I would really hate them to slow drag this until January and turn this over to the new Attorney General instead for fun. So, this guy's got all kinds of problems, and I wish him the best. Good luck, buddy.
Well, I was thinking about that at Thanksgiving, and what do I have to be thankful for? And it's certainly not the choice of the American people. But speaking of Thanksgiving, how was Thanksgiving?
We had our annual Thanksgiving party at the Cannabis Chapel downtown last Saturday. It was a good time. We had about 50 patients show up and, watched a couple of college football games and hung out, and good vibes all around. Good people. A lot of people brought a lot of lovely medibles for us to sample, and it was fantastic. A lot of good community, lots of love all around.
So did you find the people that were going to this were a mainstay of the weekend community and the medical marijuana community?
Oh, for the most part. Did you see a lot
of new people?
I saw a few new people. A lot of familiar faces, though. How do I put this? I think it's a pretty good venue. It seems like fair to me, and everyone seemed to enjoy it. Like, it's not the biggest place in the world, but everyone felt comfortable because it's so centrally located in town that it's like, if you're in Henderson, it's fair. If you're in Summerlin, it's fair. You know what I mean? So it's not it's not too crazy for anyone to get to. And kind of talking off of that point, we're hoping to have a New Year's weed party at that same location to be announced, and we're trying to have a little get together. You can see the strip right from there, so we'll all be able to see the fireworks and the whole thing. And we're hoping to just have a little.
Well, that would be a perfect location for it.
And we'll see how cooperative everyone is. We're trying, like I said, negotiations are pending. So
very cool. And and this is at the Las Vegas Cannabis Chapel.
It is. Vegas Cannabis Chapel is. Oh, it's on Las Vegas Boulevard, just south of Charleston, and I'm not exactly sure what the exact address is. It's something South Las Vegas Boulevard, just south of there in the Arts District, and it's a really rad little place. If you're looking for a cannabis-themed wedding, or like if you have a significant stoner in your life that you're looking to get hitched with, you might want to give them a call. So,
well, that would.
And they also do their term-ready classes there, and they'll help you get certified to get into the industry and things like that. And they put a lot of people through that class and gotten a lot of people certified. So they're good folk, and we thank them for letting us use their venue. And I guess before we sign off here, we'll tell people real quick, if you guys want to call into the show, call 702-685-8380. And once again, we are at Worldwide Digital Broadcasting. That's WWDBTV.com. Or, of course, you can go to our Facebook page, Weekend 702, or our website, weekend702.org, to find all these wonderful clips from me and my host, my friend Mike here. And
hey, have a great weekend. Hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving last week, and we'll see you next time.